A lot of great matchups in basketball. Got a chance to watch the games last night on ABC. The Rockets against the Bucks. You know, I like the Rockets as sort of a dark horse here. I think given a shorter season, the fact that I have those two players in Westbrook and Harden, if they get healthy, they get Eric Gordon back, the Rockets to me are going to be a tough out. Portland was fun yesterday against the Celtics. Watched the Lakers. The Pelicans, if I'm the Pelicans, I just say to Zion, why don't you go home? We're not going anywhere. And my point is, if you want to have him with the team, that's great. But if you're not going to play him, then just send him home. He just doesn't look like he's in shape. He is explosive, but he doesn't look comfortable out there. They got blown out by the Clippers, and I know it was nice. I feel like the Pelicans felt like the NBA did everything they could do to get you guys in a position to maybe make it into the postseason, but they can't play the games for you. And after losing, and they didn't look good at all. You know, not having Zion or, you know, he's on his minutes restriction there, but you're losing by 35 to the Clippers. And it really looked like junior varsity out there. But you got a couple more games, but I would just have Zion go home and then regroup. Because that was my big concern. You either pay, and you're going to play him or you don't. Don't have him sort of there. And if he's going to be there on a minutes restriction, why didn't you play him, save up some minutes for the final 5 to 7 minutes against the Utah Jazz? Because you could have won it. And you need to win games. That, to me, is a necessary risk right there. Now, unnecessary. You don't need it. Don't need him out there. Go through the motions, play your games, get a little experience there, but I would have Zion just go home. On loan from Sports Illustrated, their senior NBA writer, joining us from the bubble. He is Chris Mannix, who joins us on the program. Hi, Chris. What do you have for me today?
Well, I'm pretty much at my low point, health and cleanliness wise.
Why is that?
Showers are not daily here in the bubble, and meals have consisted for me largely of, they've got in the snack room this giant bowl of those little peanut butter cups. I think I'm averaging like 15 a day. Like it's a lot that I'm putting in my system. So that's where we're at, Dan.
Have you done laundry?
They actually have a laundry service. So there's a bag that you can just drop in a bin. So
good.
That's, for a New Yorker, you know, that's the fluff and fold is much needed.
All right, let me talk to you about the Zion Williamson situation, because it felt like the NBA went out of its way to get the Pelicans at least into Orlando, into the bubble. And when I watched the first game, I didn't understand the minutes restriction there. And if you're going to be smart, then why don't you have him be used for valuable minutes, maybe at the end of a game? I don't understand the 3-4 minute burst. I think you're more apt to get hurt in a 3 or 4 minute burst trying to do too much than if I give you 7 minutes where you can relax out there on the floor. Then I watched him yesterday against the Clippers, and I'm thinking, send him home. This is a disservice, I think, to him, and I think New Orleans has to be honest about this. Where do you stand with the whole Zion situation?
Yeah, a couple things. One, when Zion came back, I was at the Pelicans practice and was talking to David Griffin there, and look, Pelicans officials have made it clear that the Zion situation with his minutes has nothing to do with the knee injury that cost him all but 19 games this year. It has to do with the 13 days that he missed with the family emergency. So if it was any player, I think they'd probably operate under the same protocols because of the fear of any kind of soft tissue injury. And I would think obviously that fear gets ramped up even more when you're talking about your franchise player. I do agree with you when it comes to the minutes situation, where if you're going to play Zion like 15 minutes a game, this is really only applicable for the first game. The game against the Clippers, I mean, they were blown out. That game was over early on. But against the Jazz, you've got to time these minutes so you can get him back in for the final 5 minutes of that game. Boston's had kind of similar problems, you know, adjusting the minutes for Kemba Walker. It might have cost them their first game against Milwaukee. And last night they kept Kemba out the entire fourth quarter of their game against the Blazers. So I think where you can argue with the Pelicans is if you're going to play these short bursts, why not play them in consequential minutes? and divvy it up so you make sure that Zion can be out there in crunch time situations.
What do you take away? Best team so far you've seen is who?
I mean, the Bucks looked pretty good right up until the end of the game last night. So there's that. I mean, I thought coming into this that the Clippers might struggle because they've had so many guys missing. But, I mean, they've been great. I mean, they were on fire from three-point range in their last game. And that's something I wondered about that team coming in. And every team, would they be as efficient from three-point range after all this time off? But the Clippers playing this well without, Montrezl Harrell and without Lou Williams in the mix at this point, with their guys starting to get their legs, I don't think right now that's a question of which team is playing the best. It's which team looks like they're going to be playing the best. And the Clippers are interesting. I'll throw one other team at you, too, because I've watched them a couple of times. I mean, Houston's wild to watch. I mean, they really are. They were out-rebounded last night by 29. That's the kind of stuff you see in, like, Billy Madison. Like, you don't see that in an actual basketball game. Out-rebounded by 29, but because they were so good at getting in the paint and driving and kicking, they took 61 three-pointers. That's 17 more than their season average. And, I saw Daryl Morey leaving the building, and Daryl was like, man, we didn't even make what we usually make. They only made 21 of them in that game. So the Rockets, if they can continue to get great dribble penetration from Harden and Westbrook, there's no reason to believe that they can't. I mean, they're going to be a handful to try to keep off the scoreboard. If they can win against the best team, record-wise in the NBA by giving up a rebounding edge of 29, there's a lot of teams that are going to have a lot of problems with them.
Yeah, that was my outlier. When you start to think about the Bucks and the Clippers and Lakers, and I said you don't want to face Houston because they had the X factors there with Westbrook and Harden, and you get Gordon back, and it's a different type of team that you're a style that nobody else is playing the way they play it, and that's why I think Houston is one of those teams.
Let me say, Dan, on that one more thing there, I think teams got to adjust to the Rockets and do what the Jazz did last year. Last year, the Jazz, remember, they put Rudy Gobert on Westbrook, and just Gobert just kind of sat there and dared Westbrook to score 50 on mid-range jump shots. You're going to put up he's going to give you a big stat line, but if you trade mid-range contested or mid-range Russell Westbrook twos for uncontested threes, you take that all day long. I didn't understand Milwaukee's strategy of just throwing Dante DiVincenzo and George Hill to the fire and letting them play Westbrook straight up. I mean, I think you got to do something unorthodox and dare Westbrook to beat you from the mid-range.
What do you make of the Lakers so far?
I mean, so far so good. And, it's certainly not they're not missing Avery Bradley as much as some people thought that they might. Davis, at least in the opener, he played fantastic. LeBron's still getting his legs under. I mean, they are what I expected them to be. They don't look anything less. They're not the team we saw right before the pandemic, but they don't look like they've struggled. They don't look like they're out of shape. They look like the favorite in the West right now, or at least the co-favorite. We're
talking to Chris Mannix, Sports Illustrated senior NBA writer, joining us from the bubble. What are you hearing about next season?
There's a lot of talk already about how this is going to work next season. And right now, the big thing for the NBA is getting in all 82 games. They want the 82 games at a minimum for the television revenue. The union doesn't want an 82-game season that starts on December 1st, which the NBA would like to do to get it back to its regular schedule right now. So that's kind of the first domino to fall. If the NBA comes off the 82-game season, I think you could have a 50, 60-game season that starts December, even January, because at that point, it doesn't really matter. The question that the league is working through right now is how do you start that season? And some of the GMs that have been on these calls with the league have told me that one of the working ideas right now is to have several bubbles that are set up. It's pretty obvious, Dan, that bubbles are the only thing that works. I mean, the NBA's is working, soccer, hockey, everything else is not working at this point. So the NBA is already kind of in the conception stage of maybe 5 or 6 bubbles that they could put together. You wouldn't stay there for the duration. You might stay in the bubble a month and maybe take a week or two off. There's a lot of things to work through there. But right now, the way that the NBA is looking at it is that you might have to have several or more than that bubbles to get these teams in to start the season.
Wow. I brought this up earlier in the show. How many players are must-see TV in the NBA? because you start to run down the list, and I had about 5 or 6, and I'm probably not as lenient as you are. I said LeBron, I said Harden, I said Doncic, Steph Curry when healthy. Durant, I'm kind of on the border with that. I don't think the Greek Freak is must-see TV. Russell Westbrook used to be. Anthony Davis is not must-see TV. And now I'm taking teams out of this. I'm just looking at an individual. Kawhi is not must-see TV, certainly not during the regular season. Trae Young is a little more must-see TV than some of these other players, in my opinion. Damian Lillard is somebody that I love watching. I don't know if you have anybody else that, like, do we have 5, 7, or am I missing out on somebody here?
No, you got to the guy I was going to mention at the end, Damian Lillard. I mean, he's must-see TV. Like, he against Boston the other day, the Celtics had like a 10-point lead or something, and Damian Lillard has Marcus Smart on him for most of the game. And Marcus Smart is probably a first-team all-defensive player. And Lillard just goes off. He pulls jump shots from, Steph Curry shoots these long shots. Damian Lillard seems to shoot just as many and is just as efficient, from that range. He's the guy that when I see him, and that's kind of what I do here. I go to a lot of practices, but I kind of circle the games and the players that I want to see go at it. And Lillard, I think he's got his next game is coming up against Houston. Lillard versus Russell Westbrook once again. That's watching that largely because of Damian Lillard, because of what he does and what he's capable of doing at any point in the game.
He's not afraid, man. And he's going to have a chip on his shoulder his entire career if he stays in Portland, because you sort of forget. And you look, he goes to Weber State. Like, it's just one of those careers you're going to look back and go, you can put those stats up against anybody. He's really that impressive.
And they are a really interesting team because, look, I look at Nurkic and Collins and them coming back, and that's a huge boost to them. But watching them, I can't help but wonder what they'd be with Trevor Ariza. Carmelo has been fine. He's been against Boston. He was efficient from 3, but he still, jacks up these long 2s and commits silly fouls because he's not quick enough anymore to be a consistent 3. If that team had Trevor Ariza, my confidence in their ability to not only make the playoffs, but do something in the playoffs would be a little bit higher. But watching them, you can see they miss that kind of versatile defensive wing that Ariza is.
Is the commissioner in the bubble?
He was at some point. I believe he was in the bubble for the opener. I don't know if he's still here.
So he's allowed to come and go.
I would imagine, and I'm supposed to speak to him at some point, but I would imagine that what he's doing is what a lot of, team officials or owners or whatever are doing, and that's continue to be tested every day while you're off campus. And when you get into the bubble, you can have a shorter quarantine period because you've been tested all throughout. So maybe it's what the teams were at like 36 hours or 48 hours when they first got into the bubble.
Enjoy the candy bars.
It's gross, Dan. Really gross.
I can't wait to talk to you in like 2 months.
Here's the thing. I'm not sure if I'm going to be 20 pounds heavier or 20 pounds lighter because there's no pizza, which is always my go-to, but there's unlimited candy. So I'm not sure which I gain more from.
What about beer?
You can order off campus. They'll deliver for you.
Like a
I've
keg?
done that.
Can you order a keg?
Not a keg. You can order cases of beer, but But the problem is also, shout out to the league for not doing this. There's no bar here. Like, sports writers without a bar is, I don't even know what the comparison is. Like, it's like missing a leg.
They would rather go without oxygen before they would a bar.
Some of us sit by the pool with a 30 rack, like we're in high school, drinking air. So here's what it is.
All right. Thank you, Chris.
You got it, Dan.
That's Chris Mannix, Sports Illustrated senior NBA writer. That wouldn't be my first question when I got there, but it would be high on my list. I wouldn't be worried about the food they were going to give me. I'd go, can I smoke a cigar anywhere? Is there any tequila here? And can I get a couple of beers on tap?